The road to Dimora's corruption trial began when he was arrested at his Independence home in September 2010. Hours later, a mugshot of the man who was once the most powerful politician in Cuyahoga County was taken by federal marshals. By the end of that day, Dimora emerged from the federal courthouse proclaiming his innocence.
Those phone conversations will work to my benefit for the most part. I really believe that I've always been above board. I'm not worried about the phone taps. The phone taps, as you folks in the media know, when you give a quote, you can take it out of context or you can interpret it, a phone conversation, 5 different ways.
But much more was to come. Just 6 months later, in March 2011, even more corruption charges were filed against Dimora. Then, just last October, a new round of conspiracy and corruption charges involving Dimora and Cleveland businessman Michael Forlani. And by year's end, Dimora's lawyers were filing motions claiming prosecutors were unfairly piling on, making it impossible for them to prepare for the January trial.
Now, let me also refresh you on Michael Forlani and those charges that you just heard in that report. That is going to be an entire separate trial, if in fact that proceeds at all. But that was part of the delay tactics last fall and almost into just this January, Leon, where his defense attorneys were telling the judge here that, well, we can't possibly be ready for this trial if you've now charged Mr. Dimora along with a new co-defendant who was Michael Forlani. So that case has been now delayed until the end of this case.
You know, as we sit here and awaiting the jury to come back in and deliver its verdict, perhaps in the next few minutes or so, my mind goes back, Ron Regan, to those days in 2008, several years ago, when FBI agents swept in on the Cuyahoga County offices and swept in on the home of Frank Russo, the auditor then, and County Commissioner Jimmy Dimora, and so much rippled out of that, including a complete change in the way Cuyahoga County is run. I'm told, Ron, that the jurors are walking into the courtroom right now. I don't know if somebody's getting you that information, but we're getting this information right here, and I will let you decide whether you need to go right this moment or whether you've got a little bit of a time to spend with us.
Yeah, I think I can stay with you. We have our News Channel 5 crews both in the courtroom, in the media room, and I think you and I can play this as the counts come in, Leon. What I'd like to be able to do as these verdicts come in, and you and I will both be alerted to them simultaneously, just go ahead and break in, let me know what that count is, and I'll be looking at my own iPad here to see as well. But what I hope to do is provide some insight to you and to our viewers on what these counts entail, what the real details, and kind of get down into the real nitty-gritty of what these counts are. Again, keep your eye on count 1, which is the RICO conspiracy. And if I could just quickly, I want to go back. I started to tick off some of the elements of that. But one of them, of course, is that Mr. Dimora paid $5,000 to get his job in the auditor's office, that he paid $10,000 bribe in his own divorce case to a common pleas probate judge to get an outcome that he wanted. There was another example of Ferris Cleem trying to use Jimmy Dimora to influence a cement contract out at Cleveland Hopkins Airport. Ferris Cleem owns a large construction company here in the Cleveland area and wanted Dimora's help on sort of greasing that contract so he would get the deal. And so these are some of the examples that were mentioned. There's another contractor that did work at Jimmy Dimora's home in exchange for some street resurfacing contracts. So these are the sorts of elements that are contained inside that overarching conspiracy charge, Leon.
Okay, I want you to hold your position right there, Ron Regan, because we've got some more information we're going to pass along to our viewers right now. A report that was done earlier. Overseeing Dimora's trial was U.S. District Court Judge Sarah Leoy. News Channel 5's Deborah Lee profiles the Canton native who one court observer calls no nonsense but fair?
This is a portrait of Judge Sarah Lee Oy when she sat on the Common Pleas Court bench in Stark County. Canton Repository City Editor Dave Serino covered the courthouse beat back then.
Judge Lee Oy is known for being straightforward and no nonsense, but she's very patient. She'll listen to all sides, and she'll give everyone a...
All right, we've just learned that the verdict in count 1 is guilty. The jury has just returned a guilty verdict, Leon, in the conspiracy RICO charge against Jimmy Dimora. Essentially what that means is that the jury has found that he ran Cuyahoga County government as a criminal enterprise for his own personal gain.
That's the big one. That's the big one, Ron. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that's the big one that we were watching very closely.
Oh, it is, Leon, because again, it means that they have found him also guilty of at least two subsequent charges, which are going to include bribery, obstruction of justice, mail fraud, honest services mail fraud, which I can get into later at a later date when we get to those counts. But this is a very significant charge, and it could very well lay the groundwork for guilty verdicts in subsequent charges.